Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Canto 11, Chapter 2, and there's one text, text 6. Bhajanti ye yata devan deva api tathaivatan jayeva kama sachiva sadavo dina vatsala. Bhajanti ye yata devan deva api tathaivatan jayeva karma sajiva sadavo dina vatsala. Bhajanti ye yata devan deva api tathaivatan jayeva karma sajiva sadavo dina vatsala. Please chant. Bhajanti ye yata devan deva api tathaivatan jayeva karma sajiva sadavo dina vatsala. Bhajanti ye yata devan deva api tathaivatan jayeva karma sajiva sadavo dina vatsala. Bhajanti ye yata devan deva api tathaivatan jayeva karma sajiva sadavo dina vatsala. Thank you very much. The word for word, Bhajanti, worship. Ye, they who, yata, in which way, devan, the demigods, deva, the demigods, api, also, tata eva, just in that way, tan, them, chaya, in a shadow, eva, as if, karma, of material work and its reactions, sachiva, the attendants, sadhava, saintly persons, dina vatsala, merciful to the fallen. And the translation, it's a BBT translation, Disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Those who worship the demigods receive reciprocation from the demigods in a way just corresponding to the offering. The demigods are attendants of karma, like a person's shadow, but sadhus are actually merciful to the fallen. And the purport is fairly long, so here we go. The words Chayeva Karma Sachiva are significant here. Chaya means shadow. The shadow of the body precisely follows the movements of the body. The shadow has no power to move in a way different from the movement of the body. Similarly, as stated here, Vajanti ye yata devan, deva api tatai vatan. The results the demigods award to living beings correspond exactly to the living being's actions. The demigods are empowered by the Lord to follow precisely the particular karma of a living entity in awarding him happiness and distress. Just as a shadow cannot move independently, the demigods cannot punish or reward a living being independently. Although the demigods are millions of times more powerful than the human beings on earth, they are ultimately the tiny servants of God, whom the Lord allows to play as the controllers of the universe. In the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prithu Maharaj, an empowered incarnation of the Lord, states that even the demigods are subject to punishment by the Lord if they deviate from his laws. On the other hand, devotees of the Lord, such as Narada Muni, by their potent preaching, can interfere in the karma of a living being by persuading him to give up his fruitive activity and mental speculation and surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In material existence, one works hard under the bondage of ignorance. But if one becomes enlightened by association with the pure devotee of the Lord, one can understand one's actual position as an eternal servant of God. By rendering such service, one dissolves his attachment to the material world and the reactions of his previous activities. And as a surrendered soul, he is endowed with unlimited spiritual freedom in the service of the Lord. In this regard, the Brahma Samhita states, Yas Svimdragopam atavendram aho swakarma pantana rupa palabhajanam atanoti karmani nirdadahati kintu sa bhakti bhajam govinda maripurusham tamaham bhajami. Translation: I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns to the root all the fruitive activities of those infused with devotion, for those who walk the path of work, no less for Indra, king of the demigods, and for the tiny insect Indragopa. He impartially ordains the due enjoyments of the fruits of activities in accordance with the chain of works previously performed. Even the demigods are bound to the laws of karma, whereas a pure devotee of the Lord, having completely given up the desire for material enjoyment, successfully burns to ashes all traces of karma. In this regard, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented that unless one is engaged as a surrendered soul in the devotional service of the Lord, he cannot actually be considered nishkarma, or free from all personal desire. Sometimes a materialistic person will engage in charity or altruistic activities, and in this way consider himself a selfless worker. Similarly, those who engage in mental speculation with the ultimate goal of merging into the impersonal Brahman aspect of the Lord also advertise themselves as being selfless or desireless. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, however, such karmis and gyanis, while busy in their so-called selflessness, are in fact servants of lusty desires. In other words, they have not perfectly understood their position as eternal servants of God. The altruistic karmi falsely considers himself the best friend of humanity, although he is unable to give actual benefit to others because he is ignorant of the eternal life of bliss and knowledge, beyond the temporary hallucination of material existence. Similarly, although the Jnani proudly declares himself God and invites others to become God also, he neglects to explain how the so-called gods have come to be bound by the laws of material nature. Actually, the attempt to become God is based not on love of God, but on the desire to take the same status as God. In other words, this desire to be equal in all respects to the Supreme is simply another materialistic desire. Therefore, the karmis and gyanis, because of their dissatisfaction in artificially trying to fulfill their own desires, can show no actual mercy to the fallen souls. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya has quoted the Uddama Samhita, Sukham ichanti bhutanam prayo dukha saha nirnam tatapi tebya pravara deva eva hare priya. Rishis, this is the translations, Rishis want happiness for all beings and are almost always incapable of tolerating the unhappiness of men. Nevertheless, the demigods are superior because they are very dear to Lord Hari. Close quote. But although Srila Madhvacharya has placed the demigods in a higher position than the merciful rishis, Srila Jiva Goswami has stated, Sadhavastuna karmanugata. The sadhus are actually better than the demigods because the sadhus are merciful regardless of the pious or impious acts of the conditioned souls. This apparent disagreement between Madhvacharya and Jiva Goswami is resolved by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who points out that in the statement by Srila Madhvacharya, the word rishi or sage indicates the so-called sadhus or saintly persons among the karmis and gyanis. Ordinary fruitive workers and speculative philosophers certainly consider themselves to be at the summit of pious morality and altruism. However, since they are ignorant of the supreme position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they cannot be considered equal to the demigods, who are all devotees of the Lord and are aware that all living beings are eternal servants of the Lord. Even such demigods, however, cannot be compared to the pure devotees such as Narada. Such pure devotees are empowered to award the highest perfection of life to both pious and impious living beings who have only to follow the orders of such pure devotees. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Yuta Padakamlam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganuragatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Romapada Swami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Sunyavadi Pashachya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation one more time for this particular text 6. So this is the translation of this text that we're looking at today. Those who worship the demigods receive reciprocation from the demigods in a way just corresponding to the offering. The demigods are attendants of karma, like a person's shadow, but sadhus are actually merciful to the fallen. So this is Vasudev speaking to Narada. And there's a contrast being made by Vasudev in speaking to Narada, he already having worshipped Narada according to proper etiquette. So that contrast is in terms of the functioning of the demigods and the functioning of the sadhus. So the demigods, the devatas, they respond to acts of worship of the worshipper. So that's how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur puts it. Just like a shadow follows the acts of a person. or the actions of the person or the movement of the body, as was put in the verse purport. As Srila Vishwanath states it, this is how he puts it: the devotees follow the actions of the worshipper. And that's from the Sarata Darshani commentary on this verse. So in contrast to the functioning of the demigods is that of the sadhus, or the devotees. The sadhus, as stated by Vasudev, are merciful to the fallen. So, in fact, the sadhus are not functioning specifically in response to acts of worship. And Srila Jiva Goswami Kramasandarbha, he explains it. The devotees, associates of activities of worshipping the Lord, that's how he has defined devotees or sadhus, they are not subject to karma, but rather they act independently and are merciful to the fallen. So I'm going to look at this even more closely. Now there's a statement in the purport, and that is that the demigods are empowered by the Lord to follow precisely the particular karma of a living being, and that's how they award happiness or distress. So the demigods themselves, they cannot punish or reward a living being independently. And Srila Jiva Goswami, in speaking with Maharaj Parikshit on the duty of an intelligent man who's about to die, because that was the question asked by Maharaj Parikshit, he gives a listing of the different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular areas. So the premise is that a conditioned soul living under the purview of material world, he cannot be expert in every type of materially enjoyable asset. Can't be. But by worshipping a particular demigod, one can have considerable influence over a particular matter. So that's the underlying premise for this list that's going to come up, that is being given by Srila Sukadev Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. So the demigods, they give the reward for the act of worship. And since the act, and this is very interesting, note, pertains to the development of the material body of the living entity, it's called karma or fruitive activity. So that's Lord Krishna's definition of karma. It pertains to the development of the material body of the living entity. So Srila Sukadev Goswami, he gives an understanding of how particular demigods award particular success based on the karma of a particular living entity. So here is how Srila Sukadev Goswami gives a breakdown of how a person who's trying to become more expert in a particular area of material functioning can actually even locate which demigod they should be worshipping in order to get the particular enhancement of the material asset they're wishing to enhance. So here, it's quite a long listing, but it's so interesting. So, one who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma or Brahaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king Indra. One who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire. One who aspires for money should worship the Vasus. One should worship the Rudra incarnation of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishvadev. One who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Ashwini Kumaras. And a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. And one who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvasi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible, and I don't know what this was, my computer changed something. Fame. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead. And one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. So this is all from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 3rd chapter, verses 2 through 7. So Lord Krishna, he gives an explanation of this category of living beings who can perform acts that pertain to the development of their material bodies. Because this whole description that I've read, or the particular remedy for wanting to increase one's expertise in some material area and actually isolating the particular demigods that one needs to worship in order to achieve that, it's a certain category of persons that are actually going to be paying attention to this. Because actually, just by taking to the worship of that particular demigod, they're actually bringing about some development of their material body, meaning they're enhancing some aspect of their material life. I mean, in some cases it was specifically the body, wanting to have a strongly built body. And in other cases, it's some area of control or power, having power over others, or having a good marital relationship, or having a good wife, or wanting to have a good bank balance, etc. So that explanation of the category of persons who actually decide to enhance their material situation, that category is isolated by Lord Krishna, where he gives an explanation of these persons. And this is how he describes them. And this is from Bhagavad Gita 7:20. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto the demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own nature. So that's the particular description Lord Krishna gives of the category of persons who decide to actually do this enhancement of their some aspect of their material lives. And that text is karmas tar hirtagyanam prapadyante nya devata tam tam kriyamanam astaya prakritya niyata svaya. So the particular value that's attributed to these persons of following the rules and regulations of worship in relation to the demigods responds to a particular conditional, and that is that they've actually lost their spiritual sense. And they're looking for immediate fulfillment of material desires. So that's actually the particular, even though there's a value, it depends on this condition that they've actually lost their spiritual sense and they just want immediate fulfillment of material desires. And Srila Prabhupada gives a reason for persons choosing this kind of action. And this is how he puts it. Such people do not go to the personality of Godhead because they are in the lower modes of nature, meaning ignorance and passion. That's Srila Prabhupada giving a reason for why persons choose that particular mode of worship. So being driven by the modes of passion and ignorance, these demigod worshippers enthusiastically follow the rules and regulations prescribed for them in the hopes of attaining material prosperity. Yes. And it's interesting. I mean, I have exposure to somebody in that category. And indeed, there's, a casual interest in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but there's enthusiastic following of the rules and regulations related to, in this particular case, the person I'm thinking of is for Goddess Durga. So that enthusiasm of worship is connected to Lord Krishna. So they may not be aware of it, and it's very like a cursory kind of attention to Lord Krishna, but actually even their enthusiasm to worship is connected to Lord Krishna. And this is how Krishna puts it, how he explains it. I'm the super soul dwelling within the hearts of all living entities, and according to one's desire to worship a particular demigod, I make the faith steady so that he can worship that deity with faith. So even their faith in the particular demigod being able to fulfill their desire for some success in a particular material area of functioning, Krishna's strengthening that faith. And that's from Bhagavad Gita 7:21. So the demigods cannot, and the word that Srila Prabhupada uses is infuse the living entity with an affinity or attitude towards a particular demigod. Because usually you think, oh, the person has got this affinity for a particular demigod. But actually, the demigods cannot infuse the living entity with that affinity or attitude towards a particular demigod, because that is also arranged by the Supreme Lord as a super soul. So he can give an impetus to a person to worship a particular demigod. It's still dependent on the Supreme Lord. And the reason the demigods do not have independence is that they are actually different parts of the universal body of the Supreme Lord. And Srila Prabhupada puts it this way. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Super Soul, is also present within the heart of the demigods. Therefore, he arranges through the demigod to fulfill the desire of the living entity. So, quite extraordinary how Lord Krishna is actually assisting the whole process for the persons who want to enhance their material situation. And at the same time, he's making the arrangement that they get their fulfillment through the demigod because he's present as super soul in the heart of the demigod. So returning to the contrast made by Vasudeva in terms of the functioning of the sadhu versus the demigods, the sadhus, on the other hand, they're not subject to karma. And therefore, you could say that they're acting independently and are merciful to the fallen. That was the statement made by Vasudeva to Narada, because he's trying to praise Narada. So this acting independently is acting independently of karma. And this is the way it takes place. And this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 6th canto, the 9th chapter. A pure devotee who is fully accomplished in the science of devotional service will never instruct a foolish person to engage in fruitive activities for material enjoyment, what to speak of helping him in such activities. Such a pure devotee is like an experienced physician who never encourages a person to eat food injurious to his health, even if the person desires it. So we've just heard how Lord Krishna facilitates the whole process for these persons wanting to enhance their control capacity or enjoyment in a particular material area. But the sadhu, he won't actually assist a person to enhance their material enjoyment. Or to speak of helping him to do that. And the comparison has been made that he's like a physician who won't actually allow a person to eat food stuff that will actually injure the health of a person, even if the person wants to have that food stuff. So in fact, in the purport to this text in the 6th canto, 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, it states, and Srila Prabhupada, that the pure devotees such as Narada can interfere with the karma of a living being by persuading him to give up his fruitive activity. That's how they're permitted to do that. And to give up his mental speculation. Because remember, one of the categories of persons was those that wanted to become part of the Brahmajyoti. So these sadhus or pure devotees, they can persuade persons to not go down that route of mental speculation and surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a kind of service that's been performed by the sadhus or pure devotees. And the service that they're performing, this is the effect it has on them. It dissolves that person's attachment, the sadhu or the devotee's attachment to this material world and the reactions of his previous activities. So very profound. On the one hand, you're getting this whole category of persons who've lost their spiritual sense and are looking to enhance some area of material functioning. And on the other hand, because this is the contrast that's made by Vasudeva, the sadhu or the pure devotee, he's dissolving his attachment to the material world and also the reactions to his previous activities. So it's this kind of work that endows the sadhu with unlimited spiritual freedom. That's why you hear that word functioning independently. He's got unlimited spiritual freedom in the service of the Lord. So it's still in connection. It's still in service to the Lord. So although the word independent is used, it's independent of karma. It's a work that's giving him unlimited spiritual freedom. So that service to the Lord is defined by Lord Krishna. This is from Bhagavad Gita 9:23, because he explains, how is that person functioning? So, on the one hand, you had these persons who've lost all spiritual intelligence, and here is how the sadhu or the pure devotee is functioning. Worshipping Lord Krishna with exclusive devotion, meditating on his transcendental form. So that's actually the functioning of the pure devotee. So you heard the other category of persons, they're actually following the rules and regulations of worship. And in fact, their enthusiasm has been inspired by Lord Krishna. And the sadhus or the pure devotees, they're worshipping Lord Krishna with exclusive devotion, meditating on his transcendental forms. It's a very internal process. And Srila Prabhupada explains it this way. The sadhu is unable, the pure devotee is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness and cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshipping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other service, cultivating friendship, and surrendering fully to the Lord. So that's a description of the functioning of the sadhu or pure devotee. So these abilities, because they are abilities on the part of the sadhu, they're also facilitated by Lord Krishna, because you need some ability to be able to hear and chant and remember and want to worship the lotus feet of the Lord and render other services. And the fact that they are facilitated by Lord Krishna. And this is described. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, this is Krishna talking about that category of persons, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. So it's very personal and very complete, the nature of the relationship with Lord Krishna, very different to the relationship the persons who've lost their spiritual sense, wanting to enhance their material situation, are having with the demigods. It's very much just rules and regulations, some enthusiasm to perform the worship, faith in the demigod, that their desire is going to be fulfilled. But on the part of the sadhu or the pure devotee, Lord Krishna says, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. And so he's allowing for that exclusive devotion to him, that meditation on his transcendental form. And so what's actually happening with these pure devotees or these sadhus, they're offering everything to Lord Krishna without maintaining any selfish motive. And this being the contrast for those wanting to fulfill their desires. So the reciprocal relationship with Lord Krishna is such that Lord Krishna is supplying them all the necessities of life, and he's protecting whatever it is that they do have. So see how there's not the selfish motive involved. So all the necessities of life are actually being supplied by Lord Krishna, and he's providing protection for whatever it is that they already have. And Srila Bhaktivinoda paraphrases Lord Krishna speaking. So this particular text that I read, where Lord Krishna is saying, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. Srila Bhaktivinoda paraphrases Lord Krishna speaking, which further explains this reciprocal relationship between the sadhus and Lord Krishna. So this is how he puts it. Although I am detached from activities of this world because of affection for my devotees, I take pleasure in helping them. I'm never offended by my pure devotees because they never pray for anything material from me. I personally ensure that all of their requirements are met. So very personal, extremely personal. So the quality that's alluded to in Vasudev's statement to Narada of the mercifulness of the sadhu is also highlighted by Lord Krishna. And this is from Bhagavad Gita 12:13, because, we're looking at Vasudev telling Narada that the sadhu is very kind to the fallen. So here's Lord Krishna highlighting this mercifulness of the sadhu or the pure devotee. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities. It's the first thing Lord Krishna brings attention to in highlighting the pure devotees or the sadhus. Who does not think himself proprietor and is free from false ego, who's equal in happiness and distress, who's tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. So Lord Krishna highlights the particular qualities that the sadhu has. So Vasudeva, in his statement to Narada, he's highlighting the mercifulness of the sadhu or the pure devotee, referring, of course, to Narada and generalizing to that category in his statement. And Lord Krishna says it too. He isn't envious, but he's a kind friend to all living entities. But then Lord Krishna lists all the other particular qualities of the pure devotee. He doesn't think of himself as a proprietor. He's free from false ego. He's equal in happiness and distress. He's tolerant. He's always satisfied. He's self-controlled. He's engaged in devotional service with determination. And then that part that we've heard before, his mind and intelligence is fixed on me. Such a devotee is very dear to me. So the sadhu, he's acting in a merciful way to the fallen. And this is due to the fact that the sadhu doesn't have any enviousness towards any living being. So he does not retaliate even when he's attacked by others, just because he doesn't carry this envy. So he's the well-wishing friend of everyone. And his being merciful has a reason. And this is the reason. His thoughts are always on saving a misguided person from further material suffering. And the reason he does not have false ego is because he's not identifying with his material body. Even when he's troubled, he doesn't become angry, thinking that all the inconveniences are the results of his own misdeeds. So by contrast with the demigod worshipper wanting to fulfill a particular desire, the sadhu is always satisfied with what he can easily obtain. As opposed to the demigod worshipper looking to become expert in some material area, the sadhu is always eager to come to the platform of pure love of God. And so he tries with determination to advance in spiritual life. So the value of being a kind friend to all living beings on the part of a sadhu, which is what Vasudeva was highlighting to Narada, is conditional upon his engagement in devotional service. So that is the exploration of this contrast being made by Vasudeva to Narada on the category of persons wanting to enhance some material functioning and that of a sadhu or pure devotee. So if there's any thought to add to this or some question that presents itself.
I have an observation, and I thought of a question too. The observation is that from what you pointed out, that the worshippers of the demigods, you quoted Srila Prabhupada say that they lost their spiritual sense. In order to worship the demigods, the actual condition to do it properly is that you have to lose your spiritual sense. So, indeed, you tend to notice that these worshippers of demigod, they're actually thinking, in general, I won't say, all, but it appears that they actually quite thinking that they're doing something quite spiritual, that is their spiritual life. In fact, you have temples that promote bhakti to these demigods, and they adopt, at least externally, some activities of bhakti, of devotion, because that's is the devotion that is um, display to worship these demigods, and appears quite spiritual, and people get this idea of a spirituality, and in fact inspirations and this and that. In general, it seems to be more directed at just piety. Do things for people, like food distribution, or especially it looks like that's the thing, to help people that are suffering, to do this type of piety. So this idea that although factually you have to lose your spiritual sense, there is an idea that actually I'm very spiritual. And even we have, sort of devotees within our community that are sort of drawn towards that um, um, sort of display of so-called spirituality, and become someone inspired by it. So that's an observation. A question that I have that I will find very interesting to pursue is is you have situations in which great demigods are also very advanced devotees. They're sadhus, such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Hanuman. Um, these are all demigods, but they're great devotees. And sometimes you see them sort of following the protocols of demigods and bestowing, being obliged to bestow a result to a particular worshiper, even when they can understand that it's going to be a problem, i.e., Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, and etc., etc. But they're, Mahajans, they're the top authorities, and great devotees. So I wonder how that split, sort of is organized, or how it happens. Because sometimes you see Lords, both of them, I mean all of them, these great devotees, demigods, pure devotees, they display sometimes, their full devotional personality, and sometimes they act within the confines of their demigods, activities. So,
Yes. Yeah, the observation that there's even institutions that are set up for persons who have chosen to worship a particular demigod to achieve a particular enhanced area of material functioning. I mean, and you highlighting the fact that Srila Prabhupada says that it means that that category of persons is the condition that's been met for them to be performing that kind of activity is that they've lost a spiritual sense, which means that they're actually not understanding in the hierarchy of demigods being subject to the will of the Supreme Lord. So, and that the Supreme Lord is the ultimate controller and the ultimate benefactor. So it's actually removing God out of the picture. So by virtue of that, Srila Prabhupada is saying that they've lost spiritual sense. And so what you're pointing out is that persons come to have this idea that they're performing a spiritual activity because they're worshipping a demigod. So if God has been wiped out of the picture, there's no question of spiritual activity. It's a form of worship of a higher being, and somebody orchestrating the functioning of different things in the universe under the order of the Supreme Lord. So it certainly is a form of worship, and the value that the worshipper can be attributed to the worship is that they're following some rules and regulations to do that worship. So that's to their benefit that they're able to do that. But the motive is a selfish motive. So therefore it can be criticized. It's not an exclusive devotion to the demigod. It's performing worship according to rules and regulations in order to receive something. So the term you often use is a kind of transactional thing. It's and the only thing that puts it into the category of worship is that they are following scriptural rules and regulations. But spiritual, no, because selfish motive and removal of Lord Krishna or God out of the picture. And then the second part, the question of the demigods being obliged to give benedictions to the worshipper who is following rules and regulations, whatever austerities are advised, that worshipper is performing that austerity, or say in the present time it may be giving a certain amount of money of their wealth in order to attain greater wealth. Or something that we're reading in the scriptures, a particular person standing on one leg for, so many thousands of years. And sometimes you even see in the present day, persons will stand on one leg for 5 minutes. It's a kind of austerity that is meant to give some reward. And in most cases, it's wanting some power. So the demigod, because of the following of the rules and regulations, they have that obligation. If the austerity is performed and is performed for an X amount of time, then the demigod has to give the reward or the benediction for the worshipper having performed the particular austerity according to the rules and regulations of Scripture. So the demigods, they're close associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. So they can do this in a very detached manner. It's their duty. So it's like doing work. You dutifully perform some action. So even the giving of benedictions is dutifully done because the rules and regulations have been followed. But then, of course, that question that you raise is, or that you brought up, is that the judgment is there. Oh, this may not be beneficial in the long run, which they do understand because they have great intelligence. But there's the obligation because the rules and regulations have been followed. So hence the suffering that comes to them too. And that's just the arrangement that Lord Krishna has made, that the demigods also at times have to go through the tumult of having given some benediction that then causes some problem that involves them, and in some cases they're even having to flee for their lives, or the universal order is disrupted in some way. Their work is disrupted for Lord Krishna. So that part there, there's that obligation, and at the same time, they're in that position because of their great devotion to Lord Krishna. So, as you pointed out, you do get, beautiful prayers being done by particular demigods. You read them in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma. And that does show their devotion to the Supreme Lord, but somehow there's the work part has to dutifully be done, even if the judgment dictates that the giving of benedictions in some cases is going to be problematic, and even for themselves, there's still the obligation. So,
Yeah, there will be a difference between a particular group of demigods and some of the exalted pure devotees. So I mean, you see it when there is a situation in which there is a turn, or there's the demons are sort of taking over the universe. There's a bunch of the majority of the demigods, they go and they completely miserable, and they go to beg for help in complete anxiety. And in general, they go to Lord Brahma, who appears to be more, that the narrations always show that he's in a transcendental position. He's like, okay, we're going to Lord Vishnu, and then I made a plate. So there's a difference between Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva than Lord Indra and the other Vayu, all the demigods that are in quiet anxiety. They always going, they're struggling with these positions, and not Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Uh, but on the other hand, we understand, okay, personalities such as them, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, when they act in certain way, the pure devotees are always in tune with the purpose of the Lord. So even when they act, when Lord Brahma gives the benediction to Hiranyakashipu, is to facilitate the pastimes of the Lord, the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev and Lord Varaha, like that. And so there's always that arrangement that is different than when demigods are struggling with envy or fear or hankerings and things like that. We see instances in which between Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, like for example, the narration in the later part of the Bhagavatam, that Lord Shiva was running for his life because a demon wanted to explode his head. It appears that Lord Shiva is sort of not transcendental, is running out of fear. But this situation is for facilitating a particular pastime of the Lord. We can always understand that. Different when Lord Indra does, something out of fear like that. That's my understanding.
yeah.
There's a difference, between and they're all devotees, but one's are pure devotees, the other one are mixed devotees, they're materialistic devotees. So they have certain things that they have to deal with.
Oh, thank you. That is a nice analysis. I think it sort of goes back to some of the contrast that's been made by Vasudev to Narada, where you get that highlight of what the position is of the pure devotee. This constant meditation on the Supreme Lord, this being free of envy, being completely tolerant. Uh, so, what you pointed out is very nice, that where you do see the disturbance, it means that there is some selfish motive coming in some way. And with the pure devotee, that's just not there. It's just not there.
Yeah, it's interesting also in the purport. I think there is that part, the last part, in which there is the apparent discrepancy in understandings between Madhavacharya and Srila Jiva Goswami. Is that what's part of this? Is tomorrow's?
No, it was in the purport.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how it gets resolved by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, because Srila Madhavacharya is saying that the demigods are higher than the rishis. They're in a higher position because they're very responsible servants of the Lord that are, administrating the whole universe. And then Srila Jiva Goswami say, no, the rishis are superior because the rishis, in terms of their mercy, they won't, as you mentioned, they won't help, they won't do something that will harm the conditioned souls. And the demigods are obliged to almost feed that lack of spirituality, or that loss of spirituality. So and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta concludes that actually what Srila Madhavacharya was referring to rishis was the so-called rishis that are impersonalists, or that are materialistic, type of thing, that are not in the position of the transcendental, that so even that, you made it in the beginning, the jnanis and the karmis. The jnanis are also those who are trying to achieve oneness with the impersonalists. They're considered also lost a sense of spirituality.
Exactly.
And so Srila Madhavacharya is referring to those as so-called rishis,
Yes. Jitendra has a comment.
Thank you. I was thinking, Srila Prabhupada said, some people's ignorance is so profound they can't be moved. Some people's ignorance is so profound they can't be moved. And then we have Chaita Guru, the Lord within the heart. And I remember when we were going out to the airport, we were handing, Chicago was, I think, one of the fifth largest places. O'Hare Airport was, as far as books going out. And so many books went out. But then we were buying back so many books. And the inimical behavior out there was pretty intense at times. And, the Lord is within the heart, and He's giving directions to all living entities. And they're always accepting and rejecting. So, and Prabhupada encouraged book distribution. But if a person's sincere, which there's not that many people, because most people don't want to go back to Godhead, they're madly engaged in chewing the chewed. So, it seems like our effort was kind of in vain in a sense, because if somebody's serious, which is very few and far between, they'll get a book, or they'll, the Lord will, direct them properly. But it's a thankless task. So that was very discouraging. And then, there's people that are coming to the temple here that they're eating meat, and they've been doing that for 50 years. So it's just like a thankless task, and the endeavor is so much to, bring them around, but they don't respond. So do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, that's quite one could say, one could consider it perturbing in one sense that devotees actually attempt to reach out to the public. So therefore, the public means the whole mass of persons who one doesn't know which category they fall in, but one could take it that there are many persons in that category who have lost their spiritual sense and are actually just looking to enhance their material situation. So therefore, they would have no interest if they're told that this is actually spiritual literature or literature that's going to put you on a spiritual path. So there is that, one would expect that would naturally be the case, that you're going to come across a large category of persons that don't have interest. But then there will be categories of persons that are more inclined towards goodness. So they will respond, at least with proper etiquette, to, gratefully accept a book that's on spiritual subject matter, although they may not understand, just maybe they're the ones that aren't eating flesh or are actually thinking there must be something beyond this general material functioning, something higher. So those persons will gratefully accept. So it's indeed, as you pointed out, they may be in the minority, but because of that minority existing, one still goes and makes the effort and has to put up with the 3/4 majority that is just looking to enhance their material well-being. And it may be accompanied by such bad manners, as you were pointing out, of not even, or taking a book and then throwing it, that showing no proper etiquette whatsoever, even that. But one is grateful to the devotees who take that kind of service, and the discouragement that you brought up, it's interesting, I suppose, because how the sadhu or the pure devotee is defined as always having in their thought not wanting people to suffer further in their material situation. So if one's armed with that thought that you're actually helping persons to not continue their suffering, then it's a kind of motivation for still making the attempt.
Yeah, well, man is the architect of his own destiny. So some people learn by hearing, some people learn by experience, and some don't learn at all. But there was actually 4 kinds, wasn't there? One learns by hearing, one learns by experience, and then one doesn't learn at all. But then wasn't there one more?
Or maybe actually going through, having to learn through going through the experience.
Yeah, we already said that.
Oh, so
that was number 2. But I thought there was 4. And then the other devotee who gave class on, I'll let him blow the, is he going to do it or?
Go ahead.
The devotee that gave class on Sunday, and he's giving a class tonight at Leela Mundry's house. I don't know if you knew about that. She told me about that. But he was saying there's 6 types of atheists, but in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 4 kinds come to Krishna and 4 kinds don't. So I don't know, did you hear about those? The philosophical atheist. I was upstairs, trying to listen right by the speaker, but still I have a hard time. So I'm going to have to talk to him about that. But myself, I mean, as far as spiritual knowledge, I was just there. Satsvarup Maharaj has a book, My Search Through Books. So I was kind of like that. I was kind of like, well, let me check this and that. And then some people are cherry pickers, and which is good in this, but they, they'll accept a certain part of the Bhagavad Gita, but they won't accept the other part. Have you met people like that? So. But anyways, the endeavor was. I remember Indra was here, and he was upstairs, and he would go downtown Chicago for kirtan and stuff. And then finally, he just got fed up, and he says, I'm out of here. This place is too materialistic. I'm going back to India." And he went to India. But, because down on Michigan Avenue, it's kind of the hub for high-end purchases like, Gucci handbags, jewelry, artificial necessities of life. And Indra would go down there constantly, for months on end, trying to, encourage people to, but they're so steadfast in their, procurement of material, artificial necessities of life. They didn't have time for it, so he just got discouraged. So I can understand that, But
well, it's quite challenging if you coming into a line of people lined up in front of the Louis Vuitton store waiting for entrance into the Louis Vuitton store to get whatever leather item is considered prestigious to own, and you're going to come and bring a piece of spiritual literature to them at that moment. I would imagine it's you already have somebody with their mind set on some material thing. It might not be the right moment to introduce the spiritual literature.
But it's such an endeavor to, go out there, and
Yeah.
can be kind of discouraging after a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems that at least at the present time, kirtan works very well because it's become an accepted medium of getting in touch with something spiritual. So through all the popularity of yoga, kirtan has become very acceptable. So persons may find it easier to connect with spirituality, Lord Krishna, through sound vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the actual study of philosophical concepts may come further down the line, but the initial contact, at least in the present time, it seems to be being facilitated through kirtan.
Yeah.
Book distribution also has expanded, because I remember when I used to go in book distribution, you do mostly small books and you do big books, Bhagavad Gitas, and the percentage of Bhagavad Gitas that you made in comparison to the small books was much lesser. Right now, you have book distributors. There's not as many as it was before, but the book distributors that are there, they're distributing piles of books. I mean, like bundles. You're able to do to one person a bundle. So, and if you get a taste and the mercy, then it's fun. It's not an austerity. Same thing with Harinam. For some people that are new to it, it may be a little awkward to disrupt people's routines or whatever. But when somehow you get a taste, it becomes like really such a joyful activity. When you see these pictures that Paramakaruna Prabhu sends of people accepting these bundles of books, I mean, some people comes out with, a case of Bhagavatam. They taking that. That was unthought. That was something that it was impossible back in time.
So it must mean that the regular worship of the deities and the distribution of prasadam by temples is, and the attempts at performing public kirtan, harinam, and doing book distribution, it actually is changing the atmosphere.
That's a fact.
It certainly must be.
It have to be. It have to be the amount, the huge amount of prasadam, the huge amount of books, the huge amount of chanting the mantras, the activities that are, the auspiciousness of worshiping the Lord in the city. I mean, they have to be an effect.
Yes.
And of course, times are becoming more materialistic and increasingly conflicting, but you can see people there. There's a lot of people out there very receptive and ready to take. That was makes it so tragic that we're not out there so much, because there's a lot of people that are ready to receive, and the few that are doing that regularly are seeing that both in book distribution, in Harinam, in whatever outreach program you do.
So, in fact, the picture that Jitendra Prabhu, you were painting of that time in, I guess, the 70s, of the distributors in O'Hare, and, the realization that many came to that it's actually quite a struggle to have persons be receptive, persons that are more in the mode of goodness, and Srila Prabhupada puts it, that the others are in the mode of passion and ignorance, where they're completely unreceptive to spiritual literature. It may indeed that now it is half a century later that right now there's been a change in the atmosphere, just based on how Subal's describing the receptivity of persons to take numerous books in one go. Oh. So there certainly must be a change in the atmosphere.
Back in time, you have empowered book distributors like Tripurari Maharaj and so many that were highly empowered. I mean, they would distribute thousands of books. I mean, the airport party here was famous, for distributing thousands of books. It was quite far-reaching, and it's always been very powerful. It's just like right now is you're seeing people with piles of books, hard books, boxes of Bhagavatam out in Sankirtan. It was like, what? I remember I would do, the most I did was like 20 Bhagavad Gita's hard books in the December marathon, So, anyway, we're going
we will end
late.
the class, but thank you very much. It's very nice to have come to this point where pictures emerged of receptivity to spirituality. Hare Krishna.